For decades, we've been told that an irregular heartbeat is just part of getting older, something to simply monitor and manage. But recent medical discoveries reveal a startling truth. Certain heart rhythm changes after 65 aren't just warning signs, they're emergency signals that demand immediate action. What makes this particularly concerning is that this specific rhythm disturbance often goes unnoticed because it can feel completely normal, yet it silently increases your risk of stroke by over 500%. Today, I want to share with you the critical heart rhythm change that every person over 65 must recognize, and more importantly, the immediate steps that could save your life. The human heart beats approximately 100,000 times every single day. After age 65, this incredible organ has already completed over 2.3 billion beats, and like any hardworking muscle, it begins to show signs of wear. However, what many don't realize is that the electrical system controlling these beats undergoes subtle but significant changes that can transform from harmless irregularities into life-threatening emergencies overnight. The heart rhythm change I'm referring to is called atrial fibrillation, but not the kind that causes obvious symptoms like chest pain or shortness of breath. This is what cardiologists call silent or asymptomatic atrial fibrillation, and it's become an epidemic among seniors. Unlike the dramatic heart attacks we see in movies, this condition creeps in quietly, often during sleep or rest, when you feel perfectly fine. Here's what happens inside your chest. The upper chambers of your heart, called the atria, begin to quiver instead of beating in a coordinated rhythm. Imagine a perfectly synchronized orchestra suddenly having musicians play at different tempos. The music continues, but the harmony is lost. In your heart, this loss of coordination means blood doesn't flow smoothly from the upper chambers to the lower chambers. Instead, it pools and swirls, creating the perfect environment for dangerous blood clots to form. The electrical system of your heart consists of specialized cells that generate and conduct electrical impulses. After age 65, these cells naturally begin to deteriorate, much like old wiring in a house. However, certain factors accelerate this deterioration dramatically. High blood pressure, which affects 75% of Americans over 65, puts constant strain on the heart muscle, causing the electrical pathways to become irregular. Sleep apnea, present in nearly 40% de los mayores, crea episodios repetidos de privación de oxígeno que dañan el sistema eléctrico del corazón. Even seemingly harmless factors, like caffeine sensitivity, which increases with age, can trigger dangerous rhythm changes in a heart that's already vulnerable. What makes this condition so insidious is how normal it can feel. Many people with atrial fibrillation report feeling slightly tired or having occasional moments of breathlessness, symptoms they easily attribute to normal aging. Some notice their heart skipping beats occasionally, but since it doesn't hurt, they dismiss it as stress or too much coffee. Others feel absolutely nothing at all. This is precisely why it's so dangerous. The immediate danger lies not in the irregular rhythm itself, but in what it creates: blood clots. When your heart's upper chambers quiver instead of pump effectively, blood flow becomes sluggish, particularly in a small pocket called the left atrial appendage. This pocket acts like a dead-end street where blood can pool and thicken. Dentro de horas de desarrollar fibrilación auricular, los coágulos microscópicos pueden comenzar a formarse. Dentro de días, estos coágulos pueden crecer lo suficiente como para desprenderse y viajar a través de su sistema circulatorio. When a clot from your heart travels to your brain, it causes a stroke. But not just any stroke. These tend to be particularly severe because clots from the heart are typically larger than those formed in other blood vessels. Studies show that strokes caused by atrial fibrillation are more likely to cause permanent disability and are twice as likely to be fatal compared to other types of strokes. The cruel irony is that many of these strokes occur in people who felt perfectly healthy just hours before. The statistics are sobering. Atrial fibrillation affects 1 in 4 people over age 40 during their lifetime, but the prevalence doubles every decade after 65. By age 80, nearly 1 in 3 people will develop this condition. More alarming is that up to 30% of people with atrial fibrillation have no symptoms whatsoever. They're walking around feeling fine while their stroke risk climbs silently. Let me share what happened to Margaret, a 68-year-old retired teacher who came to see me after her routine physical. Ella se sentía fantástica. Ejercitaba regularmente y no tenía quejas. Her family history included some heart disease, but her cholesterol and blood pressure were well controlled. Durante su examen, noté que su pulso se sentía irregular. When we performed an electrocardiogram, it revealed she was in atrial fibrillation. Margaret was shocked because she felt completely normal. We discovered she'd likely been in this rhythm for months, possibly longer. The irregular rhythm had been so gradual in onset that her body had adapted to it. However, blood tests revealed early signs that clots might be forming. We immediately started appropriate treatment, and within weeks, Margaret's heart returned to normal rhythm. 6 meses después, ella permanece saludable y activa, pero a menudo reflexiona sobre lo cerca que estuvo de un derrame devastador sin saber que estaba en peligro. Margaret's story illustrates a crucial point. Your heart's electrical system can fail silently. Unlike chest pain, which demands attention, irregular rhythms can feel like nothing at all. This is why recognizing the subtle signs becomes absolutely critical for anyone over 65. The first sign to watch for is changes in your exercise tolerance that can't be explained by conditioning or weather. If you notice that activities that were previously easy, like climbing stairs or walking across a parking lot, now leave you slightly more winded than usual, pay attention. This isn't necessarily normal aging. When your heart rhythm becomes irregular, it pumps less efficiently, meaning less oxygen-rich blood reaches your muscles during activity. The second sign is subtle changes in your sleep patterns or energy levels. Many people with atrial fibrillation report feeling more tired than usual, especially in the afternoon, or needing more sleep than they used to. Some notice they wake up feeling less refreshed despite getting adequate sleep. This happens because an irregular heartbeat doesn't rest effectively during sleep, so your body never gets the full recovery it needs. El tercer signo es la intermitente conciencia de tu latido cardíaco cuando no estás haciendo ejercicio. Most people aren't conscious of their heartbeat during normal activities. Si usted empieza a notar que su corazón está latiendo mientras lee, ve la televisión o está acostado en la cama, especialmente si el ritmo se siente irregular o fast, this warrants immediate evaluation. Some people describe it as feeling like their heart is fluttering or jumping around in their chest. The fourth sign is episodes of lightheadedness or near fainting, particularly when standing up quickly or during mild exertion. When your heart rhythm is irregular, it can't maintain steady blood pressure as effectively, leading to moments when not enough blood reaches your brain. El quinto y más sutil signo es los cambios cognitivos. Some people with atrial fibrillation notice mild difficulty concentrating, or moments of feeling mentally foggy. This occurs because irregular blood flow means inconsistent oxygen delivery to the brain. While these symptoms can have many causes, when they occur together with any of the other signs, they create a pattern that demands attention. Now, here's what you need to know about getting help immediately. Si usted reconoce alguna combinación de estos signos, no espere a su próxima cita de rutina. Atrial fibrillation is a medical urgency, not quite an emergency unless you're having stroke symptoms, but it requires prompt evaluation, typically within 24 to 48 hours. The first step is to check your pulse properly. Place 2 fingers on the thumb side of your opposite wrist, about an inch below your wrist crease. Cuenta los latidos durante 30 segundos y multiplica por 2. Normal resting heart rate for adults over 65 ranges from 60 to 100 beats per minute. But more importantly than the rate is the rhythm. The beats should feel evenly spaced, like a metrónomo. Si el tiempo entre latidos varía significativamente, si algunos latidos se sienten más fuertes que otros, o si el ritmo se siente caótico en lugar de regular, esto sugiere fibrilación auricular. If your pulse feels irregular, the next step is to contact your healthcare provider the same day. Explain that you've noticed an irregular heartbeat and request urgent evaluation. Many offices can accommodate same-day appointments for potential heart rhythm problems. If your provider isn't available, most urgent care centers can perform an electrocardiogram and make appropriate referrals. Durante tu evaluación, varias cosas sucederán rápidamente. Un electrocardiograma confirmará si estás en fibrilación auricular y ayudará a determinar cuánto tiempo podrías haber estado en este ritmo. Blood tests will check for conditions that can trigger irregular rhythms, such as thyroid problems or electrolyte imbalances. Your provider will also assess your stroke risk using validated scoring systems that consider your age, gender, medical history, and other factors. Treatment decisions depend on several factors, but they generally fall into 2 categories: controlling the rhythm and preventing clots. Rhythm control might involve medications that help your heart return to normal rhythm, or in some cases, procedures like electrical cardioversion, where controlled electrical impulses reset your heart's rhythm. Clot prevention typically involves blood-thinning medications, which dramatically reduce stroke risk but require careful monitoring. Here's something crucial to understand about blood thinners. Many people over 65 fear these medications because of bleeding risks. While bleeding is a real concern that requires monitoring, the stroke risk from untreated atrial fibrillation is typically much higher than bleeding risk from appropriately managed blood thinners. Modern blood thinners are also much safer and more convenient than older options, with some requiring no routine blood monitoring at all. The timing of treatment matters enormously. If atrial fibrillation is caught early, often within the first 48 hours, your heart can frequently be returned to normal rhythm relatively easily, and the risk of clots is lower. Si ha estado presente durante periodos más largos, el tratamiento se vuelve más complejo y volver al ritmo normal puede ser más difícil o imposible. This is why immediate attention is so critical. Every day that passes with untreated atrial fibrillation increases your stroke risk and decreases the likelihood that your heart rhythm can be restored to normal. Some people live with atrial fibrillation for months or years before it's discovered, by which time their risk of complications has increased significantly. Let me address some common concerns that prevent people from seeking help promptly. Many people worry about bothering their doctor with something that doesn't feel serious. Entiende que los proveedores de atención médica prefieren evaluar problemas de ritmo cardíaco posibles de manera rápida en lugar de tratar las consecuencias devastadoras de la fibrilación auricular no tratada. Otros se preocupan por el costo de la prueba o el tratamiento. While medical care does involve costs, the expense of treating a stroke caused by atrial fibrillation typically exceeds the cost of managing the rhythm problem by tens of thousands of dollars. Some people fear that discovering a heart problem will limit their activities or independence. In reality, treating atrial fibrillation appropriately often allows people to maintain or even improve their activity levels. Untreated atrial fibrillation tends to worsen over time, gradually limiting what you can do. Treatment helps preserve your function and independence. Prevention strategies can reduce your risk of developing atrial fibrillation. Though age-related changes in the heart's electrical system aren't entirely preventable, maintaining healthy blood pressure is perhaps the most important preventive measure, as uncontrolled hypertension is the leading cause of atrial fibrillation in older adults. Regular moderate exercise helps maintain heart muscle health and electrical stability, but avoid sudden increases in exercise intensity, which can trigger irregular rhythms in vulnerable hearts. Sleep quality significantly impacts heart rhythm stability. Sleep apnea, in particular, dramatically increases atrial fibrillation risk and makes it harder to treat successfully. If you snore loudly, wake up feeling unrefreshed, or have been told you stop breathing during sleep, evaluation for sleep apnea is important. Tratando la apnea del sueño a menudo mejora la estabilidad del ritmo cardíaco. Managing stress helps maintain stable heart rhythms, as chronic stress hormones can trigger electrical instability. This doesn't mean avoiding all stress, which is impossible, but developing healthy coping strategies and ensuring adequate recovery time between stressful periods. Limiting alcohol consumption is important, as even moderate drinking can trigger atrial fibrillation in susceptible individuals. The old advice about a glass of wine being good for your heart doesn't apply if you're prone to rhythm problems. Similarly, being cautious with caffeine, especially later in the day, can help maintain rhythm stability. Staying properly hydrated supports normal electrical function, as dehydration can trigger irregular rhythms. However, this doesn't mean forcing excessive water intake, which can dilute essential electrolytes. Normal thirst is usually a reliable guide to adequate hydration. Managing other medical conditions helps prevent atrial fibrillation. Diabetes, thyroid disorders, and lung diseases all increase the risk of developing irregular heart rhythms. Keeping these conditions well controlled reduces your overall risk. Understanding your family history is valuable, as atrial fibrillation does have genetic components. If close relatives developed heart rhythm problems, your risk is higher, making it even more important to recognize early signs and maintain preventive strategies. The technology available today makes managing atrial fibrillation much more effective than in the past. Smartwatches and fitness trackers can detect irregular rhythms, though they shouldn't replace proper medical evaluation. Some devices can record electrocardiograms that can be transmitted to healthcare providers for review. However, remember that these devices can also give false alarms, so don't panic over occasional irregular readings, but do pay attention to consistent patterns. If you're diagnosed with atrial fibrillation, understanding that this is a manageable condition helps maintain perspective. Millones de personas viven vidas normales y activas con una fibrilación auricular bien controlada. The key is appropriate treatment and regular monitoring. Many people find that once their rhythm is controlled and stroke prevention measures are in place, they feel better than they did before diagnosis. The most important message is this: heart rhythm changes after 65 aren't just part of normal aging that you should accept and ignore. Your heart's electrical system is sending you crucial information about your health and safety. By recognizing the signs of atrial fibrillation and seeking immediate evaluation, you're taking control of one of the most preventable causes of heart disease, stroke, and disability in older adults. Don't wait for the irregular rhythm to become more obvious or bothersome. Don't assume that feeling fine means everything is fine. The heart rhythm change that needs immediate attention after 65 is often silent, but its consequences don't have to be devastating. Early recognition and prompt treatment can preserve your health, maintain your independence, and potentially save your life. Trust your body's signals, seek appropriate care, and remember that taking heart rhythm changes seriously isn't being overly cautious. It's being wise about protecting one of your most vital organs during the years when you should be enjoying the benefits of your life's experience and wisdom.